The Church of England is rejecting that homosexuality is a sin. Sunday, the church voted in favor of a motion to affirm transgender people in the church. Reverend Christopher Newland said, "We believe that trans people are cherished and loved by God, who created them and is present through all the twists and turns of their lives." The church also denounced conversion therapy for those struggling with same-sex attraction. A gay evangelical writer within the church stated the therapy could be, quote, harmful and dangerous. She added people can never change their, quote, innate desire.
A top Vatican cardinal recently dismissed by Pope Francis struck back this week, calling the Pope's treatment of him and other Vatican employees, quote, unacceptable. Cardinal Gerhard Muller said in an interview, quote, "I cannot accept this way of doing things." Francis informed Muller, the former head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, Vatican's doctrinal office, that he would not be renewing his contract in a brief meeting on June 30th, just 2 days before the contract expired.
The bubonic plague, which was once responsible for killing a third of Europe's population, has resurfaced in New Mexico. Health officials recently announced 2 people had been diagnosed with the illness, bringing the total number of patients diagnosed in June to 3. All of the cases occurred in the county of Santa Fe. The 3 patients all needed to be hospitalized for medical treatment. However, none of them have died. The plague is a bacterial disease. Symptoms include fever, chills, and fatigue. It is carried by rodents, and people most often contract it from flea bites. Health officials advise people to keep their pets on leashes or indoors and use flea repellent. In the 14th century, the bubonic plague killed an estimated 50 million people. However, today it can be treated with antibiotics.
35 people have died of measles across Europe in the past year, the World Health Organization said Tuesday, warning that vaccination remains crucial to stopping the spread. In the most recent case, a 6-year-old died in Italy on June 22nd. The boy's doctor confirmed that he had not been vaccinated against measles and died of the disease. Another measles death and over 3,300 cases have been reported in Italy alone since June 2016. Measles is a highly infectious disease transmitted through a virus.
Scientists from Mexico City and Stanford University published new research revealing a mass extinction is underway. In the last 500 years, there have been 5 mass extinctions where many species rapidly die off, disappearing forever. Now scientists are warning that we are in the midst of a 6th mass extinction and humans are to blame.
We are now moving into another one of these events that could easily ruin the lives of everybody on the planet.
The study notes that human overpopulation, size, and growth as some of the driving factors behind the destruction of species on Earth, which is having a negative impact on ecosystems. Now the scientists are warning if certain measures are not taken, wildlife faces further biological annihilation and the window of opportunity is closing rapidly.
When you look at a conservative estimate of how fast mammals are going extinct today, it runs somewhere between, say, 15 and 100 times as fast as the new fast rate from the past.
China has accomplished a biological first after cloning a dog through gene editing. Dogs have been cloned before, but never by this method. Beijing-based biotech company Sinogene announced a successful cloning July 5th. Beagle Long Long was born at the end of May. He may not look very different than a typical pup, but Long Long is unique in the fact that he is an exact genetic match to his father, 2-year-old Apple. Cloning by gene editing could mean a less expensive way to research human diseases. However, there are concerns over whether or not the practice is ethical. Like his father, Long Long's genes were engineered so that he would get the blood clot-causing disease atherosclerosis. CGTN reports Sinogene's deputy general manager, Zhao Jianping, said the company aims to clone many more dogs in the future, including pets.
Almost 1 billion people around the world rely on cassava as a staple food. The root vegetable is a versatile and calorie-rich crop that is resilient enough to thrive in harsh climates. But the cassava has no defense against a tiny insect that is decimating crops across East Africa, with dire economic and humanitarian consequences. The whitefly carries 2 viruses that together destroy over $1 billion worth of cassava in sub-Saharan Africa each year. Cassava mosaic disease is the more established threat and does most of the damage. But scientists are even more alarmed by an outbreak of cassava brown streak disease, dubbed the Ebola of plants.
According to scientists on Wednesday, one of the biggest icebergs on record has broken away from Antarctica, creating an extra hazard for ships around the continent as it slowly breaks up. Scientists at the University of Swansea and the British Antarctic Survey say the iceberg, measuring 5,800 square kilometers and weighing over 1 trillion tons, calved away from the Larsen Sea ice shelf sometime between July 10th and July 12th. While the peninsula is situated outside major trade routes, it remains a destination for cruise ships visiting from South America. In 2009, more than 150 passengers and crew had to be evacuated after the MTV Explorer sank following a collision with an iceberg off the Antarctic Peninsula.
Well, this is one of the evacuation centres that people in this part of British Columbia are being sent to. This is the town of Kamloops. You've got people over there being handed water, people being given food. Over here, an area for people who've simply had to bring their pets. They've had to get in their cars and get out as quickly as they could. And there are several evacuation centres like this all across British Columbia, because you have to remember that these fires are taking hold in an area that spans several hundred square miles, some 93,000 acres of land destroyed so far. As of Tuesday, the number of blazes thought to be somewhere in the region of 200, some 600 fires thought to have broken out since this whole ordeal began. Add to that the winds, and the smallest of blazes can become out of control in a matter of minutes. And firefighters really are struggling to control these blazes. First of all, there's the accessibility issue. A lot of these blazes taking hold in areas that are very remote, very hard to reach. Secondly, the smoke overhead, stopping many planes from coming in, from filling their tanks with water to then drop over other fires. And thirdly, a simple issue of staffing. There are not enough firefighters to go around. There are so many fires breaking out in so many places, firefighters needing to rest after their shifts. Hundreds of other firefighters are being brought in from across Canada.
Italian firefighters have been battling numerous separate blazes on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius near Naples. Tourists and residents have been evacuated for the second time in a week as a precaution after some observers thought the clouds of smoke were coming from the volcano itself. The flames have devastated pine forests and hectares of woodland in the area. At least 100 active fires across the Campania region are being tackled by around 600 firefighters and civil protection workers. Although arson in some cases hasn't been ruled out, dry weather and strong winds have certainly played their part.
Unrelenting monsoon rains have caused flooding across the Assam region of India. More than 2,000 villages have been affected after the Brahmaputra River burst its banks. More than half of the Kaziranga National Park, home to the endangered one-horned rhinoceros, is also submerged.
An area of 200 kilometers is underwater. You can see what the conditions are like for the animals. All our foresters and officers are helping with the rescue of the animals.
The rains kill a number of the park's animals every year. Many drown, while others are forced out onto the roads by the flooding and then hit by passing vehicles. The floods also make the animals more vulnerable to poaching when they become stranded. In the mountains, the rains frequently cause landslides and flooding that devastate crops, destroy homes, and worsen the spread of disease. Although flooding is an annual problem during the monsoon season in South Asia, the impact has been worsened by crumbling civic infrastructure, clogged drains, and uncontrolled urban expansion in the region in recent years.
Kikuyo Kumagai has lived all her 70 years here in Haki. She and her husband were lucky. Their house was not damaged by the worst flooding she has ever seen. She puts out cold tea for search and rescue workers and anyone who walks by, saying that's all she can do while she waits for her neighbors to come home. Just here in Haki, according to Kikuyo Kumagai, at least a dozen of her neighbors are still missing from this small community of 8,000 people. And according to official numbers, at least another 10 are still missing from nearby communities. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe cut short his European trip because of the floods. He visited Hockey on Wednesday and got a briefing on the search and rescue operation. He later told residents that the government would do everything possible to help with the rebuild. Fukuoka and neighboring Oita prefecture were the hardest hit by the flooding and mudslides. More than 12,000 soldiers, police, and rescue personnel are working there, cleaning up the damage and looking for the missing. More than 1,000 people are still staying in shelters.
When the infrastructure is weak, rain like this can become deadly, and that's what's happened this time in central and western China. Over 1 million people have been displaced. Over 50 so far have lost their lives. Dozens are still missing, and almost 40,000 homes much like this have collapsed. Also, almost 1 million hectares of crops have been washed away. Now, it's difficult really to calculate the economic losses. In Hunan alone, the provincial authority says that the economic losses, the direct ones, are $1.2 billion US. Now, according to the non-profit China Water Risk, floods are the most deadly form of natural disaster, and China is the most susceptible country in the world to the dangers of flooding.
Heavy rain in Columbus, Ohio yesterday. We're looking at more storms in the forecast today, and I think rain is going to be a major threat. We can't rule out tornadoes, though. We saw 6 tornado reports yesterday, and we could see more today. The main threat, though, today is going to be hail, wind, and, of course, some flooding rain. So we'll have storms stretch out along that front, and flooding could be localized in a lot of spots. We could have flash flooding occur not only this morning but through this afternoon and this evening. So watch out for that. Thursday, the threat goes off to the east. Indianapolis, Cleveland, you were included in it. And Friday, we could be looking at more severe weather in terms of hail, strong winds, and flooding rain right into the mid-Atlantic.
The Croatian island of Hvar has had enough of rowdy tourists turning the classy destination into what's been described as a boozed-up free-for-all. The island's new mayor has just introduced a raft of fines to encourage visitors to behave and dress more appropriately.
Actually, when I just took a dip in the water now, and I was on the way out, and a security, I think it was a security guard, he told me that I should put my top on, but I was soaking wet. I was like, but I just got out the water, so why? And he said, oh, you could get a big fine, so I'm just saving you some money.
Quite a lot of money. Not wearing a top could cost €500. Wandering around in a swimsuit, €600. Drinking in public, €700.
Yes, I think it's correct, because it's respectful for the others, and if you don't respect the rules, it's not nice for everybody, for every tourist.
I think it's quite ridiculous, because it's so much money, and it's like just being able to wear a swimsuit. I think it should be okay in this area, because it's very hot.
Hvar's mayor said young people who know how to behave are welcome.
Italian police officers from the country's anti-terrorism unit have raided a self-styled fascist beach club near Venice. The site at Chioggia is littered with a range of signs and posters that hark back to Italy's fascist era. One sign reads, "Anti-democratic regime-run zone, don't break our balls," while this one says, "No entry, gas chamber." He's not at home, he's in a public place, which has rules, the rules of the anti-fascist constitution. He must respect them if he wants to keep his beach club. However, manager Gianni Scarpa appeared unfazed. "I will continue my order, discipline and cleanliness. I am neither left nor right, nor am I afraid of Italian law." Venice prefect Carlo Boffi on Monday signed an order for the establishment to immediately remove all references to fascism on signs, posters and banners. Scarpa was also ordered to avoid the further release of anti-democracy messages.
The European Court of Human Rights has upheld a Belgian ban on wearing the full face veil in public. It ruled that Belgium had the right to enforce the ban to ensure social cohesion and protect the rights and freedoms of others. The court rejected a legal challenge by 2 Muslim women who wanted to wear the niqab in public but now risk fines and up to 7 days in jail. Belgium banned face veils in 2011 on security grounds to allow police to identify people. Some also argued they were symbols of the oppression of women, and MPs passed the law almost unanimously. Belgium followed closely in France's footsteps with this law, and several other countries in Europe have since introduced partial bans on face veils, including the Netherlands.
Halima Aden, a Somali-American IMG model, is a featured model in American Eagle's Fall I Can campaign. Her photographs show her in New York modeling clothes happily with her other model friends. Aden praised American Eagle for letting her be a part of their campaign. She wrote on her Instagram, "Thank you, American Eagle, for encouraging young Americans to follow their passions, express their individuality, and pursue their unique paths. #ICAN movement."
Well, Spain has seen a sharp rise in migrants arriving from Africa this year. Between January and June, up to 6,500 landed in the country, compared with 8,000 arrivals in 2016. Now, for a brief moment here on the programme, we're going to have a look at what route the migrants are travelling from Africa. Well, the way from Morocco to Spain across the Mediterranean has become the second most popular. It's believed that the Morocco-Spain route is viewed as safer by migrants than going through Libya to Italy. The UN states that Spain is not prepared to handle the increase, stressing that there are not enough facilities in the country to deal with all the arrivals. Italy still remains the EU state that's accepting the vast majority of migrants departing Africa's shores. Almost 85,000 have landed there since the beginning of 2017. Greece is also affected, with more than 14,000 migrants stranded on Lesbos and other Greek islands. On Monday, a huge fire swept through a refugee camp on Lesbos, believed to have been started deliberately by migrants who are facing deportation.
Sergeant First Class Ikaika Kang was recently arrested on terrorism charges, but had expressed support for the Islamic State group as early as 2011. Even so, he remained in the army for years while the military and FBI investigated to determine if he posed a threat. Kang was taken into custody over the weekend after declaring his loyalty to the terrorist group and saying he wanted to, quote, kill a bunch of people. According to an FBI affidavit filed Monday in federal court, Kang is on record making pro-Islamic State comments and threatening to hurt or kill other service members back in 2011.
Learned that as of early as 2011, he may have even become radicalized when he shortly after lost his security clearance for basically making pro-ISIS statements and also threatening to kill U.S. soldiers around him. We also learned that he looked to provide, and he actually went about providing documents to undercover agents that he believed to be members of the ISIS group. And then finally, we also learned that he purchased a GoPro Karma drone with the intent of teaching ISIS members how to use it to escape U.S. tank attacks overseas, and essentially use it as a surveillance capability to help them understand where coalition forces were located. And finally, the FBI said, you know, enough's enough when he pledged allegiance to ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and at the same time essentially said he wanted to take his rifle and a bunch of magazines and go and hurt people around him. And so that occurred as early as July.
Well, the U.S. State Department has approved a nearly $4 billion Patriot missile deal with Romania. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency said in a statement that the sale will boost the defensive capabilities of the Romanian military. Congress has 30 days to object to the deal, but it's not expected to do so as Romania is an important NATO partner. The agreement comes as the U.S. military deployed a Patriot battery in Lithuania as part of multinational NATO exercises in the country. Russia has expressed concerns over Romania's hosting of a U.S. missile shield, calling it a threat to Russian security.
Qatar has signed an agreement with the U.S. to fight terrorism financing, and it couldn't come at a better time for the country. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson met with his Qatari counterpart to announce the memo of understanding between the two nations.
The United States has one goal: drive terrorism off the face of the earth.
Tillerson is in the region this week to try and solve a simmering dispute that's left Qatar almost completely isolated. In early June, 7 countries cut ties with Qatar, saying the country was supporting terrorist groups. Qatar denies that. 4 of those countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain, and United Arab Emirates, sent Qatar a list of demands it must meet to end the de facto blockade. Those demands include severing ties to terrorist organizations and ending any funding for those considered terrorists by surrounding countries. Qatar's foreign minister said the agreement was not related to the ongoing dispute.
In the wake of heightened tensions following North Korea's recent intercontinental ballistic missile launch, the United States has announced another successful test of its missile defense system. The U.S. Missile Defense Agency said Tuesday that its THAAD system, located in Kodiak, Alaska, successfully shot down an intermediate-range ballistic missile target, or an IRBM. The agency explained that its anti-missile system successfully detected, tracked, and intercepted the target. Saying that it has succeeded in all 14 tests conducted so far, the agency added Tuesday's test further demonstrates the capabilities of the THAAD system to destroy incoming ballistic missiles. This was the first time Washington carried out a demonstration of THAAD against an IRBM. The Pentagon stated the test was planned months earlier and that it was unrelated to Pyongyang's missile provocation last week. But watchers say the test was carried out following analyses that the North has test-fired its first ICBM, believed to be capable of striking Alaska.
The United States has revealed it's considering a so-called secondary boycott toward China as part of its countermeasures against North Korea's missile provocation. At a regular press briefing, U.S. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said Washington will sanction third-party countries and companies that are involved in activities that help the North financially. She also stressed the U.S. will further strengthen measures to stop illegal money flowing into the regime. She thanked China for its cooperation in pressuring the North, but said the United States expects Beijing to do a whole lot more.
A fire has broken out for the second day in a row on a key Israeli army base, and investigators are suspecting arson for good reason. The fire broke out on Monday following a much larger fire in the same location at the Nahal Tzor munitions base in central Israel. I know. Still, 12 firefighting teams and 4 aircraft had to come in to bring the fire under control, and speed was a priority, according to the fire department spokesman. If the fire had raged for a longer time, it could have put the weaponry stored on the base at risk. The base is home to the IDF's ammunition center, where everything from bullets to missiles are stored. The suspicious thing is that both Monday and Sunday's fires started in multiple locations at the same time, which is characteristic of arson. The spokesman says it's too early to say anything for sure since the investigations have just begun, but still it's raising troubling questions.
Here to lay a hero to rest, but we have to remember the many ways she was a hero.
There you've got the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, speaking of the slain police officer Mia Sotis' familia. Remember, she was murdered by a cop hater on July 5th. A lot of the cameras were trained on the mayor right there, but what you didn't see was the reaction from many police officers when he came to the microphone.
He was outside on the stage, and over the loudspeaker he was delivering that eulogy, and that's what you saw. You saw hundreds of cops turning their backs on the mayor. They're upset with him, as you heard the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association head, Pat Lynch, on our show yesterday saying that they felt like the mayor would rather be in Germany protesting our president and our country, and they said that he should have been with the family instead of over in Germany.
He missed the vigil.
And the families know it, and the cops know it, and he doesn't seem to care about it, and sadly it doesn't affect his poll numbers. Still went over to Germany, and still watched as cops got beat up and seriously hurt in many cases, over 100 of them. Still went there and spoke as a resistor, an anti-Trumper in another country, which is just inexcusable. Meanwhile, the family obviously destroyed with the loss of the mom and respectful of what she achieved in her career. Here is the daughter speaking out.
Please, this is what her sister Mercedes said. Please, if you see a police officer in blue, hug them and say, thank you.